An emergency rainy day fund is crucial to maintaining your financial health. If you have a solid rainy day fund, unexpected purchases can be paid off with this instead of relying on, let's say, a credit card or other forms of debt, which can have high interest rates associated with them, which, in the long run, drain your finances and keep you from building your wealth. Saving cash can be hard, though, and there are a couple reasons for this, which we'll go into in this video. And actually, some wonder if it is worth it in particular situations where the rate of inflation will eat away at those savings. So we'll go over that, and why you need to save for a rainy day or have an emergency fund, and how you can save for an emergency fund even when you have little money to start out with. We'll also go into the types of bank accounts that you should be putting this emergency fund into so you can avoid some of the worst side effects of inflation. You're watching Finance Squared. I'm your host, Derek West. On this channel, we love to talk about finance, things like the stock market, building up your credit, as well as the tech tools that can power your finances to the next level, particularly if you're starting from scratch. But even if you're a pro and you've been doing this for a while, there is something for you to learn from this channel, and we definitely have a good time talking about those sort of things. So, like and subscribe. But in any case, 2020 has been a heck of a ride, and it alone should be an object lesson as to why having an emergency fund is paramount. As I'm sure you were aware of, 2020 started off calm enough, but as the months went on, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Right around March, when everybody realized just how bad Rona was, the whole country and basically the whole world went into lockdown and more or less crippled businesses of all kinds. In the US, millions of people went onto unemployment rolls that many are still on. The economy has recovered somewhat, with unemployment in the United States falling from a high of, I keep hearing people say 22%, but I read that the high was at 14%. So I'm not sure who to believe there, but that was the highest number of people unemployed since the Great Depression of the 1930s. At the time of recording, we're about around 8%, and who knows whether it's going to fall or not in the months to come, as more and more governments are forced to open up by the demands of their citizenry, bored to death by all the Netflix and chillin' time that they've accrued over these last couple of months. But during that time, during the time of peak unemployment, jobs became very hard to come by, and thus paychecks became very hard to come by, meaning that stimulus checks were, of course, printed by the government, which seems to be the go-to response every time there's a recession nowadays. And these checks were handed out to a ton of folks, but oftentimes, depending on what you did and what your job title was, that wouldn't replace your previous income. In some cases it did, and in other cases it actually was more than their previous income, which leads to other problems, which, is a separate video in and of itself. But of course, that meant your lifestyle would have to be cut back. It's times like these that remind us that having an emergency fund to fall back on is extremely important. And it's not just for recessions either. There are times when you're going to have unforeseen bills that just pop up in your life. If you're a homeowner and a major appliance just breaks out of the clear blue, if you live in Minnesota as an example, and your furnace dies in the middle of February, that would be a great time to have cash on hand to fix whatever problem you had. Namely, your furnace breaking in the middle of the winter. Another big example is if you have a health emergency that isn't covered by your insurance. That would also be a great time to have cash on hand to pay for your expenses. If you need help, or perhaps maybe you need to help a family member in need with one of their expenses. In times like those, it would be great to have cash to pay those things off and not credit cards. It happens. Sometimes family members are in dire straits, and really that's what family is for. Sometimes they'll be able to pay you back, other times they'll not be able to pay you back. The thing is, it would be great to be in a position to help when the time is right. So I reiterate, having an emergency fund is not for just when recessions hit. They are extremely useful in that case, but that is not exclusively what they're for. So when this current crisis is over, the need for an emergency fund will still exist. Which takes me to the next point. Saving cash is hard, which I'm sure you know. Getting cash on hand into your emergency fund, well, that's the hard part, particularly if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Hey, I've been there. As a matter of fact, I think we've all actually been there. And thinking of creative ways to save money can be an interesting exercise. But there are many ways to do it, though. It really is about following through with action and not just thinking about it. I'm going to present one of many ways to do it here, but there are many other ways out there from many other competent people. The key is not just watching the video and giving it a like and subscribing to the channel, although you should do all of those things for this channel and all those other great finance channels out there that provide great content on this subject. If I've not been clear here, gently caress that like button for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Sorry for that shameless plug. But it's about taking action on whatever set of steps work for you. Again, this is just a set of steps I did when I was living paycheck to paycheck to ensure that I had an adequate rainy day fund saved up. So first things first, track your spending. So this part can really be a lifesaver. A lot of people, particularly in this digital age that we live in, spend money and don't even know it. Maybe you have a recurring payment going to a gym that's in a city that you haven't lived in for 2 years. That actually happened to me. Maybe you spend more money than you think you do on Amazon. Also something that I ran into. And maybe you spend more money than you realize on eating out at restaurants than you care to admit or even know. Again, something that I discovered was happening to me. Maybe there's some sort of recurring nefarious payment going out to someone who you've never met, but because it's small enough, you never really notice it. And they just keep drawing on that payment month after month after month. That hasn't happened to me yet, but it could and it would if I didn't track my spending. You see, all of these things and more can happen to any one of us in this connected age that we live in. That's why it is ever so important that you track every dime, maybe every penny, that you spend, and check in and make sure that your spending is aligned with the value that you are expecting to receive. If that ratio is off in any way, if that number is off in any way, then mercilessly end all payments to the offending merchants. There is no reason why you should continue to spend money that you could be using to improve your future on things that aren't providing you value. Which is a perfect segue into the next point. You need to prioritize your spending. So you've identified where you are spending money because you are now tracking your spending. The next step is to prioritize your spending. This can happen in multiple steps and can be broken down into multiple tiers. And honestly, there are multiple schools of thought on this topic. There's bucket budgeting, which takes the money that you have and assigns it to certain buckets for you to use on certain things. Things that could be as simple as needs versus wants, or it could be more complex, such as a bucket for rent, a bucket for food, a bucket for entertainment, etc. ad nauseum. Once you have those things bucketed, decide what things you absolutely must have and what things you can live without. Obviously, things you need will include a roof over your head, food to eat, electricity to power your mobile device to make it 1,000 times easier to caress that like button. Seriously, smash that thing like it owes you money. In any case, utilities, transportation, maybe you belong to a church or a charity that you care about, things like that. Then there are things that you want. Everybody wants to be entertained. Everybody wants the latest and greatest gadgets and newest fashions to be cool when they head out to eat at the trendiest restaurants. But those are all wants and can easily be cut back and chopped out of your budget to make room for your emergency savings fund. A very important need, I would add, should be your investments. You pay all of your other bills. You pay everybody else. Shouldn't you pay yourself as well? Maybe not first, but definitely in the top 5. Remember, saving is important, but in the end, it's not going to power your retirement. The inflationary effects on the dollar are just too great for that to be the case. You need to make sure your dollars are working for you, so hire them out to quality investments. That is a topic for a different video though, so if you haven't guessed already, like and subscribe. So save where possible. Now, it doesn't all have to be a brutal meat hook to your wants and needs. If you do it correctly, the savings can actually be not that bad at all. So you could make sure you purchase all of your food in bulk at your local big box store. Think things like Costco or Sam's Club. And once you do that, prep all of your meals so that you have food for the week and that you're not spending on restaurants and eating out daily. You can do that for your everyday meals like breakfast and lunch, whichever meals are the least important to you, and use those savings to eat important meals with your family and friends during special times, like once every 2 weeks or weekly at a reasonably priced restaurant that you get a coupon for, something like that. But you could put most of your recurring spending on a credit card that you pay the balance off in full every month and get the perks and cash back from that to use on items that you want and like. For example, if you like to travel and that is an expense that looms large in your budget, use an airline's reward credit card. Now, I don't have anything linked below. There are thousands of them out there. Just do a Google search. But you can use that rewards card to purchase your needs and your wants and use the free airline miles that you accumulate and perhaps the free hotel stays that you get as rewards to help offset the costs. Now you've cut out your travel budget in your personal ledger, but are still able to travel and use the difference to save your emergency fund. Or you could even use a cashback rewards card on purchases you already make. Again, nothing linked below. Just do a Google search. Take the cash that you get back from those purchases. In some cases, it can be 2% cash back. In other cases, it can be more. Other cases, it can be less. But do a Google search to find the card that works for you and save that money directly into your emergency savings fund. Like I've been saying before, pour all the rest of your newfound savings into your emergency savings fund. So after you figured out those first 3 steps, tracking your spending, prioritizing your spending, saving wherever possible, the rest of the money that you have in your budget should be poured into your emergency savings fund. That is until you hit the level of savings that you deem appropriate. And just what the heck does that mean? Well, each person has a different level of savings that they will need to get by when times get tough. Maybe you live relatively clutter-free and a pretty stoic, minimalist lifestyle, similar to yours truly. Well, in that case, then the emergency fund that you might need may not be as great as somebody with an extremely high maintenance lifestyle who has a lot of payments to maintain. For example, somebody who has a 4,000 square foot house, a yacht, an expensive foreign vehicle, Lambo, In that case, they might need significantly more to maintain that lifestyle if and when the money stops pouring in. Somebody who has purchased a used Hyundai for straight cash and lives in a $1,000 a month apartment that, may not be in the best part of town, may not be in the worst part of town, but really not living in a high luxury lifestyle, for example. They may not have as much of a lifestyle to maintain, and thus their emergency fund should not be as high. So you need to take all those factors into account when deciding what level your emergency savings fund should be. A good target to hit if you're just starting out with your emergency fund should be about $10,000 cash. If you're looking for a more challenging goal to hit, then another number to hit would be half your yearly salary, would be 1.5 times your yearly salary in pure cash. Anything more than that should really be invested in some sort of fund that will grow at much faster the rate of inflation. But again, your lifestyle and your cash needs to support that lifestyle will largely affect how much this emergency fund should be. Another question that you're probably thinking of when you're talking about saving an emergency fund is, where should you place this money? And that's an interesting question. Putting this money into a checking account probably isn't the best thing to do because it's probably going to take you quite a bit of time, probably a year or more, to accumulate the money you need into a healthy emergency fund. And money plus time can mean losses for you if you're not careful due to inflation. And what do I mean by that? Well, for the uninitiated, here's a quick primer on what inflation is and how it can affect your ability to save. Inflation is the amount at which the money supply in a given economy increases without the associated goods and services increasing along with it. Because the money supply increases, it becomes that much easier to get access to it. The easier access to it becomes, the less valuable it is to hold at that point in time. In layman's terms and less confusing way of putting it, if you have $100 and you save it in a bank or checking account to start a year, and the inflation rate is 2% that year, at the end of that year, you can only purchase $98 worth of goods. Not a huge deal now, but that effect compounds quickly. And before you know it, you only have half of your purchasing power with the money that you saved. That is why it's important to put your money into an account that pays you a decent amount of interest so you don't lose all of your money to inflation. This is where high yield savings accounts come in. So the average savings account pays you about 0.09% of an annual percentage yield. So if you put $100 into the bank at the start of the year, the bank pays you 9 cents. Meanwhile, inflation means that you can only purchase $98 worth of goods, and you've only got 9 cents. So, not sure what the math means there, but you definitely lost out on that deal. High yield savings accounts can at least get you close to a 1% APY, making the purchase power you lose due to inflation not sting as much. There are, however, some downsides to using such bank accounts. Namely, minimum deposits and minimum balance requirements, as well as some stipulations on when you can withdraw your money. A minimum deposit amount being too high can definitely influence which savings accounts you choose, since you may not want to save up just to save up. A minimum balance requirement isn't too bad typically, because if you are trying to save up an emergency fund, you shouldn't be touching this bank account anyway. Being limited in your withdrawal options shouldn't be that bad either, since, again, you're trying to save up. You shouldn't be withdrawing too much from this type of account if you are in fact trying to save up. Another type of bank account that you could use to save up this money would be a high-yield checking account. High-yield checking accounts can be even more lucrative than high-yield savings accounts. That is, if you don't mind jumping through all the hoops to earn their interest rates. It's almost like a full-time job. And there is the problem of trying to save money in a checking account, which usually are utilized for checking. If you can square that in your own mind, and if you can follow all their stipulations, the money you earn from a high-yield checking account can dwarf even the most generous high-yield savings account. So I have a video coming out on that very topic in the very near future. You know what to do. Namely, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you are aware when that video drops. Also, be sure to like this video if you liked this video and drop us a comment letting me know what your thoughts are. Do you have any other steps you take to save more money into an emergency fund? We're all dying to know, dude. So be sure to drop us a comment and let us know. So I'm about to get out of here. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on how to save an emergency fund, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.